In the heart of the old city of Jerusalem, there is a rectangular plateau, roughly 37 acres in size. It is the most contested, volatile, and holy piece of real estate on the planet. To Jews, it is the Temple Mount, the site where Solomon built the first temple, and where the second temple stood until the Romans destroyed it in 70 AD to Muslims. It is the Haram al-Sharif, the noble sanctuary, the site of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Golden Dome of the Rock, the third holiest site in Islam. For centuries, an uneasy status quo has held. Muslims pray on top, Jews pray at the Western Wall below. But there is a movement, growing in power and influence, that wants to change this. They want to rebuild the Jewish temple on the Mount. They have already drafted the blueprints. They have woven the priestly garments. They have even, controversially, attempted to breed a perfect red heifer required for ritual purification. Shutterstock. And here is the twist. The most fervent supporters of this project, both financially and politically, are not just Orthodox Jews in Jerusalem. They are evangelical Christians in the United States. Why? Why would Christians, who believe Jesus is the new temple and the final sacrifice, be obsessed with rebuilding a stone building for Jewish animal sacrifice? The answer lies in a specific, powerful, and modern interpretation of prophecy called dispensationalism.
It's a theology that connects a verse in Daniel to a verse in Revelation and concludes that a third temple is the absolute, non-negotiable trigger for the end of the world and the return of Jesus. This belief isn't just a Sunday school topic. It has shaped American foreign policy in the Middle East for decades. Today, we are decoding the theology of the Third Temple. Why do millions of Americans believe that a construction project in Jerusalem is the key to the apocalypse?
To understand why a Christian in Texas cares about a building in Jerusalem, you have to understand their prophetic clock. For most of Christian history, Catholic, Orthodox, and mainline Protestant, the temple was seen as obsolete. Jesus predicted its destruction, and when it fell in 70 AD, Christians saw this as confirmation that the old covenant of sacrifices was over. The temple was now the church, the body of believers. This view is called supersessionism, or replacement theology. But in the 19th century, a new theology emerged, led by John Nelson Darby. This theology, dispensationalism, argued that God has two distinct plans, one for the church and one for national Israel. Dispensationalists believe the church age is a temporary parenthesis. Once the church is raptured, God will resume his work with Israel for a final 7-year period known as the tribulation. And here is the key. They read the prophecies of Daniel 9 and Matthew 24 literally. Jesus says, "So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel, standing in the holy place," Matt 24-15. Paul says the man of lawlessness, the Antichrist, will take his seat in the temple of God, proclaiming himself to be God. To Thess 2-4. The logic: you cannot have an abomination of desolation in the holy place, and the Antichrist cannot sit in the temple unless there is a temple. Therefore, for the end times to begin, for the Antichrist to be revealed, and for Jesus to ultimately return to save Israel at Armageddon, the third temple must be built. For a dispensationalist, the temple is not just a building, it is the cosmic stopwatch. As long as the dome of the rock stands there, the clock is stopped. The moment construction begins on the third temple, the countdown to the second coming begins. This Christian theology found a strange, symbiotic partner in a fringe, but growing movement within Judaism. For most of the last 2,000 years, mainstream Orthodox Judaism has held that the third temple will be built by the Messiah himself when he arrives. Humans aren't supposed to force it. In fact, Jewish law currently forbids Jews from entering the Temple Mount platform to avoid accidentally stepping on the Holy of Holies. But since Israel captured the Old City in 1967, a temple movement has emerged. Groups like the Temple Institute in Jerusalem. They argue that Jews have a religious duty to prepare for the temple, to build it themselves, to hasten the Messiah's coming. They have been incredibly busy. They have recreated the golden menorah, the table of showbread, and the altar of incense, built to biblical specifications. They have established a school to train priests, Kohanim, in the ancient rituals of sacrifice. They are actively searching for a red heifer. According to Numbers 19, the ashes of a perfect, unblemished red heifer are required to create the water of purification. Without this water, the priests cannot be ritually purified, and the temple service cannot start. This is where the alliance forms. American evangelicals provide massive financial support to these Jewish groups. They are strange bedfellows. The Jewish activists want the temple to practice Judaism and herald the Jewish Messiah. The Christian donors want the temple so the Antichrist can desecrate it, triggering the apocalypse and the return of their Messiah, Jesus. They are working toward the same construction project, but for radically different and mutually exclusive endings. Why does this matter to American foreign policy? Because the site of the proposed Third Temple is currently occupied by the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. It is impossible to build the Third Temple without destroying, moving, or displacing these Islamic holy sites. Any attempt to do so would almost certainly trigger a massive global war. The Al-Aqsa compound is a red line for the entire Muslim world. This is where the theology becomes dangerous. Traditional diplomats view the status quo on the Temple Mount as essential for peace. But for a Christian Zionist believer who longs for the return of Jesus, peace is not the ultimate goal. The fulfillment of prophecy is the goal. And prophecy, in their view, requires conflict. It requires the temple. This worldview influences voters, donors, and politicians in the United States. When American leaders move the embassy to Jerusalem or support settlements in the West Bank, they are often cheered on by a massive evangelical base who see these political moves as stepping stones toward the prophetic endgame. They support Israel not just for strategic or democratic reasons, but because they believe a strong, restored Israel eventually possessing the Temple Mount is a theological necessity for the salvation of the world. There is one major physical problem with this theology: the Dome of the Rock. It's been there since 691 AD. How do Third Temple proponents solve this? There are three main theories circulating in this community. 1. The destruction scenario. Some hardliners believe the dome will be destroyed by an earthquake, a terror attack, or a war, maybe the War of Gog and Magog. This clears the way. 2. The North Theory, or Asher Kaufman theory. Some archaeologists argue the original temple wasn't where the dome is, but slightly to the north. This would theoretically allow the Third Temple to be built next to the Dome of the Rock, creating an awkward interfaith Temple Mount. 3. The South Theory. Others argue the temple was actually to the south, towards the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and the Dome of the Rock sits on the site of the Roman fortress Antonia. Regardless of where they place it, the intent is the same: to build it. So, we are left with a volatile mix of archaeology, ancient scripture, and modern geopolitics. The Third Temple is not just a building, it is a trigger. On one side, argument A: is this Third Temple theology a faithful, literal reading of the Bible? Is it a commendable act of believers watching, waiting, and preparing for the Lord's return, supporting God's chosen people, Israel, in reclaiming their heritage? Do Christians have a duty to hasten the day? On the other side, argument B. Or is this a dangerous, self-fulfilling prophecy? Is it a theology that actively incentivizes conflict and instability by funding groups that want to alter the status quo of the most sensitive site on earth? Are American Christians risking a catastrophic war in the Middle East in the name of a specific 19th century interpretation of end-time scripture? Are they trying to force God's hand? Is the Third Temple a house of prayer for all nations, or the match that lights the fuse of Armageddon? Let me know your thoughts, respectfully, in the comments below. If you found this deep dive into the explosive intersection of theology and politics fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that uncovers the real stories behind our beliefs. Thanks for watching.